A fake doctor has just been convicted for deadly filler after injecting a woman in her buttocks for a cosmetic procedure. While this is disturbing in one case, there have been multiple cases found not only by this certain woman pretending to be a doctor, but also many people all over the country and many victims and survivors. It has been deemed the underground butt injection operation. It sounds wild, but this is something that is very concerning considering that these victims are going in and finding these people. They're getting recommendations to go to these people that have no medical license, and they are ultimately injecting them with illegal substances that are potentially killing them. Not only are most people recruiting off of social media, it's said that social media is the main cause of this occurring and wanting these BBL, Brazilian butt lift-like procedures to occur in a less than professional medical clinic due to the fact that these procedures are so expensive and these women feel as though it is a necessity to have. We're going to dive deep on the psychological aspect of social media and the beauty standards, as well as these victims and survivors that have been through this, what it has been like, what they have learned, and what we can learn from this as well. But you are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I am Brooke Mckenna. We over here, we focus on the victims and the survivors over the killers and the monsters. So if you would like to join us in that and you enjoy the way I tell stories, then please subscribe down below. Make sure to have that notification bell on. And also I have a Genuine Gem newsletter if you would like to sign up for that. It's just putting in your email. I promise not to spam you, and I can personally send you my videos. So in case YouTube forgets to, you will never miss an upload. A quick thank you to our sponsor Sunshine Island for allowing me to continue telling these stories. Now, Sunshine Island is the coziest game I have ever played, with farming and tycoon adventures in a tropical paradise. You can build your own island towns into a thriving island paradise. In fact, you manage 3 different islands, each with its own buildings, animals, and production chains. It's like running an actual town. And with the community gameplay, you can actually team up and compete in global guilds. And it makes me feel like I'm creating this virtual vacation spot to escape into. Right now, they're hosting the Halloween Pumpkin Hunt event from October 20th to November 3rd, with pumpkins hidden all over your islands, and each one you collect will help you hit milestones and unlock special rewards. It is free to download on iOS and Android, so you can use my link down below to check out the limited Halloween event. And if you use my voucher that will be down below in the settings menu, you can unlock your welcome gift of 250 gems and 100,000 coins. Now let's get back to the story. So a mother and an alleged medical professional has recently been convicted of second-degree murder due to the cosmetic injections leading to the death of a famous actress. You see, 58-year-old Cindyana Santangelo was an actress and a model. She was born in Manhattan, Kansas, but she was raised in LA. As Cindy Leroux, she started out in the industry in music videos, including Young MC's Bust a Move video. She was described as the Latin Marilyn Monroe. As she got further into show business, she changed her name to Cindy Ann Lair. And in 1989, she was featured in the song Stop, written by the band Jane's Addiction. She had acted in the sitcom Married with Children, where she played a character named Sierra Madre, who was a dancer. From there, she appeared in episodes of ER, CSI Miami, and in 2001, she married Frank Santangelo, and they ended up having 2 sons together. But in 2003, Cindy Ann, she starred in a hit movie called Homicide with Harrison Ford and Josh Hartnett, and by 2025, she was actually living in Malibu. She had grown children by this point, and she was also the director and CEO of Mermaid's Cove Malibu, which was tested for a reality TV show, but was actually an all-women's luxury sober living facility. So they had 3 episodes that they had filmed, and that was created by Dynamic Films. I was able to find it on YouTube. I'll add a little bit in here, link it down below. But basically, Cindy Ann would describe in that show that she was a recovering addict, and she felt like as a woman woman, she could reach other women to help them with their addictions.
An all women's luxury sober living facility, and there the girls are recovering from alcoholism, drug abuse, and emotional issues.
I'm Cindyana. I'm a great mommy, a wife, a daughter, a friend, a CEO, and I'm a recovering addict. This disease does not discriminate. I'm a hardcore addict and I'm a low bottom user. If I use, I like to use till the wheels fall off.
Friends described Cindy Ann as having a heart as vast as the ocean, a spirit as free as the wind, and a love that ran deeper than the blue depths she adored. However, on March 24th of 2025, the LA Sheriff's Department were called to a $3 million Malibu mansion. This was around 7:15 in the evening when officers arrived at Westlake Boulevard in Malibu for a medical emergency. A woman was rushed to the hospital where she was pronounced dead. Now, TMZ were the first to identify this woman as the actress Cindy Ann, and at this time, investigators could not determine whether there was any foul play involved. However, the cause of death was unknown pending autopsy, and the homicide investigators were assisting in the investigation due to this. Rumors began to spread that this death could be related to cosmetic shots that Cindy Ann was receiving in her home. Now, especially in the California, Los Angeles, Hollywood area, this is something that is quite common. Medical procedures, these beauty fillers, anything that helps with the appearance of an individual in the eyes of a camera. Basically, a lot of these women feel the pressure to make themselves look the best they can possibly look, and due to the fact that so many of these injections and fillers have become so normalized, it's something that a lot of women are now able to even get in their homes. But it's in hopes that that's by an actual medical professional. So 7 months later, a woman was on trial for her murder. Now, it went extremely fast with this investigation as far as nobody really knew about the arrest, the diving deep into this woman, and then suddenly she was on trial for murder. So this was 55-year-old Libby Adame, who had been posing as a medical professional when she administered injections of silicone into Cindy Ann's buttocks. This had caused a fatal embolism in Cindyana. Now, her husband, Frank, told the court that his wife was killed in the prime of her life, and when he found her in the Malibu home, she was convulsing. He said that Libby was still inside after administering these injections to her. Frank stated that Cindyana was struggling to breathe, squirming on the massage table, and blood was coming from each butt cheek. He said that Libby told him that this had never happened to a client of hers before, and that she might have something in her car to help Cindyana. So Libby ended up leaving right before the paramedics arrived, and she never returned. Prosecutors claimed that Libby Adame had been long aware of the dangers of these silicone injections, yet continued to perform these despite lacking medical credentials. They pointed to inconsistent statements from Libby that she had given investigators and messages between her and Cindyana discussing upcoming appointments for the injections. However, the defense attorney, who was J. Michael Flanagan, countered this by saying that Libby was merely acting as a consultant for licensed physicians in Mexico. So she was not responsible for the injections that killed Cindyana, is what he was saying. He stated that the timeline of events does not prove that there was enough time between Libby arriving there and the 911 paramedics to be called for the procedure to have been done. Libby Adame was known as the California Butt Lady, or Latia, and she had around 11,000 followers on Instagram. She was very popular at the local party scene in Los Angeles. She was an Instagram celebrity in many eyes, especially those of her clients. She would administer these silicone oil injections to the butt for a fuller, rounder appearance. Little did the victims know that it could enter their bloodstreams and create embolisms that could lead to serious injury or death. A jury did not have any qualms finding this woman guilty because Libby had a history of troubling procedures just like this in the past. Another one had already turned deadly prior to Cindyana. You see, back in 2019, a 26-year-old named Carissa Rushpaul died after Botox injections were given by Libby Adame. Carissa had already undergone 2 cosmetic injections by this woman. So Carissa had just moved from LA to South Africa, and she was wanting to get into the social media world. So her third and final procedure would be at the home of Libby Adame and her 23-year-old daughter, Alicia Galaz. Now, this was in Encino, California on October 15th, 2019, and 911 would be called to the home, and Carissa was found to be suffering from life-threatening complications. Libby and her daughter Alicia told the paramedics very little information about what happened to her and did not speak to the police before fleeing the scene. Carissa then passed away en route to the hospital. Doctors were unaware of the procedure she had or the injections in order to save her life. So LAPD found that during this investigation, Carissa had gotten these Botox augmentation procedures where they were injecting liquid silicone in the butt area. Both of her 2 prior procedures were done by the mother and daughter duo as well. She'd actually filmed herself undergoing this procedure. However, that is not at all what was meant to occur according to the FDA when it comes to these injections. Now, that's when the LAPD found that these 2 women had no training, no license, and no medical facility to work from. They had been recruiting clients from Instagram to come to their home, or they would go to their homes for these procedures, specifically butt lifts, as Libby described herself as the California butt lady. The mother-daughter duo were charging $14,000 for 3 sessions with them. And the LA County Coroner's Office ruled Carissa's death as a homicide due to acute cardiopulmonary dysfunction and intramuscular and intravascular silicone injections. So 2 years after Carissa's murder on August 5th of 2021, both Libby Adame and Alicia Galaz were arrested on suspicion of Carissa's murder. Libby then posted her $1 million bail and was released. Alicia also bonded out and was scheduled to go to court 4 months later. And they began partying on their Instagram celebrating this release, which really made Carissa's husband Marco upset. LAPD Deputy Chief Alan Hamilton made a statement that the individuals lacked medical training, they were not experienced, and they were putting people's lives at risk, and now they were out back on the street. He said that they had contacted other victims who had suffered some long-term health issues after having these procedures with these women, and that there might be others. He encouraged any victims or relatives of victims who had passed, who figured that they were either disformed or passed away due to these women, to come forward. They believed that these women had been performing these surgeries since about 2012 out of their home. It was believed they were running a national and possibly international illegal medical operation. And right after Carissa's death, when the LAPD were asking for other possible victims, Rolling Stone actually interviewed a detective who stated that there were nearly 100 people that came forward to report that they or a loved one had been disfigured by illegal injections. This article was named "Plastic and Lies: Murder Charges Expose Vast Underground Butt Injection Operation" by Andrea Marks. They spoke to several victims and the families, including the husband of the deceased Carissa. Marco stated that he and his wife Carissa had moved to LA in 2016. Carissa allegedly became obsessed with her looks, and by 2019 she was getting lip and butt filler. That's when she met Libby and Alicia. She had gone to a party where the mother and daughter were injecting all of the partiers' Botoxes, and that is when she went in, and Libby and Alicia called out for somebody to get some sugar water. Now, when the owner of this home came in, Carissa was sitting on the bed, pale and struggling to breathe. She began passing out, and the mother and daughter told this owner to call 911, and then they opened the gates for the paramedics before fleeing. Carissa was unresponsive, and 3 hours later, she was dead. Her husband said it wasn't her fault. She was a very nice girl, and she did not deserve this. He said, "She obviously made a mistake, and I accept that, but she paid the price. It's too much." Rolling Stone found that lots of other victims were afraid to come forward. They were almost embarrassed of what they had done to themselves, often regretting their decision for these procedures. It took until 2024, so only a year prior to Cindyana's murder, for the mother-daughter duo to be on trial for the death of Carissa Rushpaul. So that's kind of a sneak peek into how short their sentence for her murder would be. You see, in the 2024 trial of Carissa's murder, Libby Adame and Alicia Galaz were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and practicing medicine without a certificate. And for the latter, Libby was convicted of 3 counts and her daughter Alicia of 2. The judge noted that Carissa's death did not seem to affect their illegal money-making scheme and that they were still doing the illegal procedures. Because again, they had bonded out and they were living their lives up until this trial. Carissa's mother, the victim's mother, Eureka, then made a victim impact statement stating, "In a single act, you caused her family and friends an unimaginable loss, as all of us still grieve so deeply every day many years later. I don't want my beloved daughter's life, legacy, and death to be in vain." She told the mother and daughter, "Please, please, please do not ever harm another soul for the rest of your days." Libby Adame was sentenced to 4 years and 4 months, while Alicia was sentenced to just over 4 years. However, the judge said that he agreed with the defense that they were entitled to credit for time served. Basically, that they had undergone monitoring while being out of custody when they were first arrested, so they were to serve less than a year in custody before being released. They had been warned, though, that if another client died under their care, they would face murder charges. And less than a year later, they were back in the courtroom for another murder. So when it came to Cindyana's trial, the prosecutors not only had the evidence of this not being the first incident of these women, but they also introduced evidence of another victim of Libby Adame's. This was back in 2018 when a 911 call came in to a Southgate salon to help a woman who was having complications after a procedure. CCTV footage showed that at the salon, none other than Libby Adame was fleeing the scene as the paramedics arrived. She had been doing this procedure, a similar procedure, and this woman died after losing consciousness. She was identified as Karina Arias. Prosecutors stated that this showed that Libby knew the risks well before Carissa and definitely Cindyana's deaths. Libby then took the stand in her own defense. She stated that she wasn't the one who administered the injections to Cindyana and didn't know who did. She said that somebody had injected her before Libby ever got to the home because she was just there as a consultant working for medical providers who could legally perform the procedure in Mexico. She claimed that the victim's buttocks was already bandaged when she arrived and that the site of the injection was too high to have been her work. She said Cindyana told her that she had already gone to a salon in Malibu and kept clearing her throat and was already struggling like she needed air when Libby arrived. She said that Frank, Cindyana's husband, told her to leave after he called 911. During the closing statements, the prosecutor asked the jurors, did she know better? The answer is a resounding yes. However, the defense kept at it that she did not do this and that Libby was still on probation at the time of Cindyana's death and she knew she couldn't do the butt work in California. But when she had, this was always on the behalf of the doctors who could legally perform in Tijuana, Mexico. He said Libby would not have had enough time to perform the procedure between arriving at the woman's house and the 2-hour-long procedure and the 911 call. The defense said that investigators only looked at Libby as a suspect. The attorney described Libby as the unluckiest person in the world. But the prosecutor told the jurors that Libby was responsible and to hold her responsible and tell her she's not above the law. He said, what she does is for the second time in her life. While someone is lying on the ground dying, she thinks of herself and she thinks of getting away and hiding. So on October 9th of 2025, very recently, Libby Adame was found guilty of second-degree murder and practicing medicine without a license in connection with the death of Cindyana Santangelo, as well as a special charge of causing great bodily harm. She is facing 15 years to life for murder and an additional 3 to 6 years for bodily harm. But her sentencing is set for November 5th, and she is being held without the possibility of bail. But it begs the question, if she would have been held without bail in the case of Carissa, would Cindyana have succumbed to this same fate. Cindyana's husband, Frank, described her as beautiful inside and out and said she saved lives through her drug and alcohol rehabilitation center. He told the reporters outside of the courtroom that his wife received the justice she deserved. But the defense called it a travesty and they planned to appeal. But a woman named Laura Marino claimed to be a survivor of the butt lift lady, Libby Adame. Laura was a singer who goes by JD Moore, and she told Rolling Stone that back in 2014, she went to see Libby, who a lot of her friends were already going to. She was at a beauty salon, and she ended up paying $2,000 to $3,000 for these injections. Libby told Laura that she was going to inject her glutes with stem cells, but during the second treatment, her leg really started hurting. She went back and told Libby that this was happening, and Libby injected her again, this time saying it was something for pain and a possible infection. But that day, she began to feel really sick. She was fainting. She had ended up having to be carried to the car by her neighbor, and once at the hospital, doctors actually told her that if she had come in 10 minutes later, she would have died from sepsis. Cindyana's husband, Frank, is now suing Libby Adame for wrongful death. But with the deadly cosmetic procedures claiming the lives of multiple women from just this one fraudulent doctor, this unfortunately isn't the end of the story. You see, Brazilian butt lifts, while popular, are also theorized to be the deadliest cosmetic procedure nationwide in a 1 in 3,000 mortality rate. Now, a Brazilian butt lift is a bit different than these just silicone injections. You see, that is when fat is removed via liposuction from another part of the patient's body and injected into the buttocks. Whereas these injections done by the mother-daughter duo were using a dangerous silicone injections that are not FDA approved, and the agency even warns that using this for body contouring can lead to serious effects, even death. So basically, the silicone injections are called the black market cousin of the BBL, called butt shots. So liquid silicone is used, and that is only approved for retina surgery or derma fillers for wrinkles in the face. But Libby and Alicia were not the first to be convicted of this sort of murder and pretending to be a medical professional in the cosmetic space, specifically for a butt lift. A survivor of this procedure from another fake doctor came forward to the BBC. In 2014, Natalie Johnson had gotten injections in Miami while working as an exotic dancer. She met someone claiming to be this doctor who offered to give her these for a fraction of the price of a normal butt injection or BBL. She knew her friends had done it, so she agreed. So she said that a man named Oneal Morris came to her house wearing white scrubs, looking professional, and injected her. She said at first the results were good. She went back for 2 more rounds, and that's when she was really sick. She noticed that her butt was turning wrinkly, she was dizzy, she was fatigued, and she was then rushed to the hospital because she stopped breathing. Thankfully, she survived this, but she had a bruise and blackened body on her butt from decaying tissue. She said that she was in pain from that for so long that she had to rely on her 9-year-old daughter to help her out, just doing regular things. She said that looking back, she didn't need it. She was perfect without it. She was just in a lifestyle where it felt that having a big butt would make her more money. And that's why she did it. This fake doctor was actually located 36-year-old Oneal Morris, who was transgender, and they were arrested. They were dubbed the Toxic Tush Doctor. Natalie Johnson, the survivor, was able to testify against Oneal with other survivors of this fake doctor for the victim that had not survived. Shatarka Nubi had actually written to the state's health department about this fake doctor, claiming that her butt had hardened and turned black and she was sick. 4 months later, she died from a massive systemic silicone migration from injections. Oneal was not a licensed doctor and would use super glue and flat tire sealant and cement mix to enlarge these women's butts. So Oneal was charged with manslaughter and practicing medicine without a license and pleaded no contest. They were sentenced to 10 years in prison and 5 years probation. Shatarka's mother, the victim's mother, said, "My daughter died the most inhumane death. 18 months she suffered." While I was digging even deeper, I found that back in 2012, a woman named Tracy Lynn Garner injected silicone into the buttock of Karima Gordon from Georgia. This was after Karima was referred to this nurse by a woman named Natasha Stewart, but Tracy had no medical training. Tracy would inject Karima, and then the next day she became sick. 8 days later, she died of a blood clot in her lungs. Karima was a model who felt that she needed these butt injections to make more money, to be this perfect version of herself. She asked her friend Natasha where she had gotten hers done, and Natasha gave her Tracy's number, so the two began to text. On March 5th of 2012, Karima got directions to a Walgreens near Tracy's house. They met up. Tracy was wearing scrubs and they headed back to her home. Karima got her injections and was in obvious pain, saying that it was the worst feeling of her life during the actual procedure. But after that, Karima had this cough. She was sweating profusely. 30 minutes later, she had her friend pull over so she could use the bathroom on the side of the road, and this happened several different times. Her friend ended up taking her to the ER, but they didn't tell the staff about the injections because they were scared. So she was released the next morning and went back 2 days later. She was initially treated for pneumonia, but finally told the doctor about her injections, and that's when the embolism was found. Unfortunately, it was too late to save her by this point. But the Georgia medical examiner, Dr. Atkinson, found that Karima's tissue had a clear oil liquid that spilled out, and she had cyst-like spaces filled with silicone as well as recent hemorrhaging. He stated she died because some of the silicone had entered her bloodstream and lodged into her pulmonary capillaries and prevented oxygen exchange.
She was a very vibrant, energetic person. She modeled for many years on St. Croix. She left behind her son. He was 16 when she died, and we're very heartbroken. We think of her every day. We still can't believe it actually happened. She was always the person that was the happiest and the friendliest, and just moved around and enjoyed life. And so the family, of course, took it extremely hard because it was something that you would say was very untimely. You may say, well, that was her choice. But I agree, it was her choice. However, she did not know that this would happen to her. And it's an illegal act that's taking place where people are given injections that are illegal and not medically substantiated.
Tracy Lynn Garner was arrested and found that she was never a licensed medical professional. She, in fact, worked as a cook at a nursing home. A search warrant of her home found numerous needles, syringes labeled for veterinarian use only, 10 bottles of super glue, a massage table, and a large container of silicone. Tracy was sentenced to life in prison for the killing caused by reckless disregard of human life. Natasha, who referred Karima to her, was actually convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 7 years. Tracy Lynn Garner only served 3.5 years before she actually passed away in prison. And just when you're hoping the horror will stop, it does not stop there. This isn't just happening recently. This was all the way back in 2011, where there was a woman who describes herself as the Michelangelo of buttocks injections. This was 45-year-old Padge Victoria Winslow, who was convicted of the 2011 murder of 20-year-old Claudia Adertimi. Padge would often travel to hotel rooms to do these pumping parties where she would inject women's buttocks with a syringe and use instant glue to close the injection sites. She would charge $1,500 to $1,800. The victim was from the UK. She was visiting Pennsylvania to celebrate her birthday with a friend. They had gone to this Padge woman that they knew as Lillian for a touch-up. Claudia was a London dancer. She was a university student. She thought that a bigger butt would help with her career, just like many other victims. And before getting injections, Claudia actually asked this woman, this fake doctor, if it would interfere with her having a baby in the future. Padge had lied about medical training and injected her. Claudia started having these chest pains. The silicone moved to her lungs and stopped her heart. Padge Winslow was found guilty of third-degree murder and assault. Claudia's friend stated that she believes that sharing her story will save other women. She says, stick with what God gave you. Now, the FBI is said to be very aware of these black market cosmetic procedures, and they are investigating these cases as well as a potential trafficking of these materials. A growing number of women are getting plastic surgery, especially to their buttocks, and they're craving a cheaper alternative to these expensive procedures. Even back in 2014, these people posing as fake doctors to perform these injections were on the rise, and patients looking for a perfect body at a cheaper cost was only getting worse and is only getting worse. A Miami plastic surgeon, Dr. Alberto Gallerani, a real doctor, said he has actually treated hundreds of women and men for these botched procedures. He's pulled many things out from patients' buttocks injection sites, including olive oil and super glue. He said that it can take years for symptoms to appear, but basically what they're putting in their body is a ticking time bomb. This is a terrifying reality that women and men feel as though they need to look a certain way, so much so that they're willing to risk their life, their health. And I think a lot of us can relate to that there is just so much pressure to look a certain way. And it seems like, in the 1990s, 1980s, there wasn't a ton of plastic surgery being so readily available to normal people. It wasn't even talked about that celebrities would get this. But now with influencers being able to go get this, and they're informing about their experiences, and they're letting you know that this is a thing you can do and where to go get it done. While the transparency is great, it's also leading a lot of people to seek out procedures and operations they probably wouldn't have even thought of prior to that, which is heartbreaking. And then when they see the cost that these influencers who make a significant amount of money are putting into these procedures, they realize they probably cannot have it, but now they really want it. And so now they're exploring cheaper alternatives. And that can lead to extremely harmful side effects. And it can be a detriment to your health. I mean, there are too many victims that we talked about here, and I'm sure so many more I did not even cover, that have lost their lives due to a cosmetic procedure. We also have to own up to, as a society, we shouldn't be making these people feel this way. The more we speak out about the negatives that it can lead to, the better. And so I hope that this case kind of changed your mind on anything you were thinking of doing. I don't think plastic surgery is all a negative. I just hope that everyone is very careful with the doctors they choose to go to and the procedures that they are allowing to be done. And just protect yourself, protect your body. While plastic surgery isn't bad, I do hope that you know that your body exactly how it is beautiful. I think that uniqueness is wonderful. And it breaks my heart to see that a lot of uniqueness is judged. But I think we should embrace it. And that's all I'm saying here. I think we should embrace it for all of these women who have lost their lives trying to attain a certain look. Thank you so much for listening. Do not forget to download Sunshine Island down below and use my voucher to get those free gifts. And don't forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay, bye.